out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim, and welcome.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. I just turned 34 on Monday, and I'm, riding that wave. It feels good.
Is that true? How did I not know this?
I don't know.
You didn't tell me.
Yes, I didn't tell you. No, for my birthday, I don't really reach out to people.
Yeah.
But I'm doing well because of that. How are you?
I'm a little hot. Other than that, I'm trying to get in shape. Like, I'm trying to make healthy choices and like, I stopped drinking beer temporarily, but like, I stopped, I'm trying to like exercise and eat well and all of that stuff. And my body is very upset with me.
Oh, it's like the whiplash,
Yeah, totally.
It's excited too.
It's good. It's just, it took about 4 days of like really feeling quite bad. And now last night, for the first time, I kind of felt more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then today I woke up and I was like, oh, I actually feel, I feel all right.
Not craving those alcoholic calorie sugars.
Not really.
Good. That's good to hear.
At the moment. It is early, so.
I like to think you're starting off my 34th year right, Tim.
This is for you, Ryan.
And
I'm trying to move more towards a less meat diet too.
Yeah. So. Well, that makes me really happy. And what also makes me happy, Tim, why I said welcome, Tim, I wasn't just welcoming you to our podcast show, Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Essen,
dismember a horror film. Each week we talk about what worked, what did not work, and anything else interesting or noteworthy about a horror film we've watched. I'm not just welcoming you to that, but I'm welcoming you to the triple-digit episodes, past 100, our first official. We're on episode 101, baby.
Wow. What a millennium? No, that's thousand. Shit. What a hundo. What a hundo we're in.
And then in 49 episodes, we'll make it to Hundo Funfo. I can't wait.
Me neither.
But God, I'm so
like a year from now.
I've been so excited for these triple digits because I really felt ambivalent about our using like the triple digit naming convention for our episodes.
05.
Yeah.
054 or whatever.
Episode 005. It almost felt like I was doing that in kind of like a, self-annoying way. Annoying myself way just for the satisfaction,
like a masochistic way.
Yes, that was the word. A masochistic way, just so the satisfaction once we got to episode 100 was going to be that all the much sweeter.
Oh man, it's so sweet. It's like the sweet nectar of the gods.
Yeah,
the number gods.
And sorry, anyone just joining us, I did do our intro, but in rapid speed as part of a long run-on sentence.
That's the way to do it now.
As I like to do.
They know.
Right.
We don't need to belabor that one.
Well, just the last points that I kind of like to add on, that's not kind of part of that thing exactly, is if you haven't guessed already, this is very much in the spirit of two friends getting together and having just watched a horror movie. So not just, to just totally shoot the shit. And Tim, it was cool starting off 101. It was a fun, solid movie. It gave me hope. Like, there's still plenty left to see.
Oh, sure.
And the film I'm talking about is The Uninvited from 1944. Pretty cool. Anything else you want to explain about our show or address anything from previous episodes?
Oh, man. That last episode was a long one, but I hope people enjoyed it.
Yeah, people like the top lists, so we gave them 4 of them.
You know what we could do theoretically? I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea, but like we could always like timestamp things in the future if people want. It's like you'd be like, if you want to just listen to the list, here's when it happens. But
totally,
whatever. If somebody wants that, you can just tell us.
Cool. All right, well, it sounds like we're set. Let's just get right into it we start with a trailer, the original theatrical trailer, if it's there, which it is there for, here we go, from 1944, The Uninvited.
This is the voice of the uninvited.
It's coming from downstairs.
Comes from everywhere and nowhere.
A house of terror on the haunted cliffs of Cornwall, where the uninvited walk unseen by men. Yet a cat arches its back in fright. Flowers are withered by the touch of an unseen, malignant hand. Candles flicker and die as a ghostly chill fills the air, and the living are clutched by the icy horror of the restless dead.
Stop, Pamela. Don't go near that door.
The Uninvited, Dorothy McCardle's gripping novel of the supernatural, comes to the screen, starring Ray Milland, Ruth Hussey, Donald Crisp, with Cornelia Otis Skinner, and introducing the exciting beauty of Gail Russell, whose first love is shadowed by the specters of the past.
Stella, what is it?
Are you ill, Stella?
Quiet. Leave her alone.
Oigan.
Stop her, Scott.
She's in a trance. I saw this happen once before at a seance. I thought it was...
It comes from everywhere and nowhere.
Oh, boy. The 40s.
I mean, I love it. I mean, yeah, with the music coming in and all that. I mean, hey, I love it. I love
There's a
what
ghost
there is
in
to
your
love.
house. Oh, my God. That door opened. Oh, it's a cat.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, Sixto, there was a cat in this movie. Do you see ghosts? They do. Okay, Tim.
Yes,
Okay,
Ryan.
Okay.
Here we go.
We did our trailer. Now is our rating per our rating system. Would we tell ourselves, would Tim talking to Tim and would Ryan talking to Ryan say that you should avoid the uninvited, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
Well, Ryan, I'm going to start this new 100 episodes exactly the way I ended the last 100 by being a stream for almost everything.
Great. I like that start. Well, I gotta be true to. Well, I haven't changed drastically in the last 100 episodes as far as my tastes either. So I'm a sucker for any of these Criterion released films. Like, man, I'm an absolute sucker for it. This one was a rent it, but could see it improving to a buy it now that I know what it is versus, now that I'm not going to have my expectations versus what it is.
Right.
There is definitely more that I enjoyed that I think will grow on me and expand and come to the forefront. And even what it wasn't working, why it's not a buy it, was just kind of less specific or just very first time viewing things, it felt like. But for now, rent it.
Yeah. Hey, did you know that Ruth Hussey was born on October 30th? I got really excited as I started to say that, and then I realized that October 30th isn't Halloween.
I'm like, okay. And for our listeners who don't even know who that is, if you didn't watch the film and read the cast list, Ruth Hussey plays Pamela Fitzgerald, and that's a perfect segue into our next section, the summary. Who is Pamela Fitzgerald, Tim?
Pamela is the sister of what's his nut?
Roderick.
Ray Milland, or whatever, however you say his name. This is going well. So, oh Jesus, Milland. Okay. God, this movie. Let's see, Rick. Let's just call him Rick because everybody calls him Rick.
Roderick. Yeah.
So Pam and Rick, they're having a nice jaunt on the rocky cliffs of some beach. And
a reminder of their siblings. Just
yep. Yeah, remember that because it sure makes total sense. And so they're having a little jaunt, and their dog chases a squirrel into a seemingly abandoned or just not occupied kind of mansion-y house on the cliffs of the ocean, and it's a pretty cool house. And they quickly decide, after a short debate, that they should buy it. And
the Windward house.
That's right. And they should move in together, brother and sister, because that's a thing.
Hey, hold on, Tim. You're coming at, this was a while ago. I really don't feel like, at least how it was presented here, that like that in itself is odd. Like,
I just think it's an odd construct.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get why here's what it is. It's serving a plot point. It's not like there's no other reason to do it other than to have them be able to have love interests.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool as just an interesting, different jumping off point, and just made them likable in just a way. Oh, okay, this is cool. I haven't really seen this.
All right, fair enough. So they buy the house, but there's a little bit of sort of rumor and suspicion around the house. Maybe it's a haunted house.
They get it for a suspiciously good deal from someone who seems pretty excited to get rid of it.
They buy that house for £1,200.
Yeah. Wait, it wasn't 12,000?
I think it was 1,200. Maybe I'm wrong, but 12,000, even 12,000. But maybe. I mean, if you think about a pound has traditionally been about double the value of $1. So it would be $2,400 or $24,000. What you choose for a fucking mansion on the rocky cliffs of the ocean. It's like It's ridiculous, but awesome. I would take that deal. Haunted or not. Fuck yeah. So the only caveat to this deal, or the sort of like the little, sort of side note, is that the guy who's selling it, his granddaughter is sort of like, fuck this, I don't want you to sell it because it was my mom's house and that's where she died.
The granddaughter is Stella, who's one of our main players.
Right. And so that kind of sets us off on a journey of Rick falling for 20-year-old Stella, and the house being haunted, and they hear, crying voices in the night, and candles flicker, and all sorts of fun, eerie stuff. And then they try to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. I mean, very, very standard haunted house kind of construct of like, why is this house haunted? It's got to be something from the past. It's a restless spirit. Let's figure out the mystery as to why it's restless and see if we can set it free.
What's so cool, though, is, you say this is kind of like the classic haunted house construct. This was the first film to do it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
So this is... And
it's cool that that everything has kind of... trickled down from this. Yeah. Well, this set the state. I mean, we'll get more into that. But just how about as far as the summary goes? Can you expound on or explain to me the kind of twist? Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can. Okay. So the story is, oh God. So Stella's mother was a woman named Mary Meredith, which, if that's not confusing, it took me almost the entire movie to get that Mary and Meredith were the same person and not two separate people. That was a task. But so Mary Meredith... we know she fell to her death. Correct. So she fell and died on those cliffs. The cliffs right outside the mansion, yeah. And there were two other people there to witness it. One was Cornelia. Is that right? Am I saying? No, I'm sorry. Carmel, not Cornelia. Jesus. So Carmel, who is a gypsy, and who is also Mary's husband's mistress. So they had an affair. That's important. And then the other person who was there is a woman called Miss Holloway. And she was, I guess, sort of like she's a doctor, sort of. Was she there, sort of their, like, live-in nurse?
Something
like that. Anyway, so, oh God, it's super convoluted. How do we get it straight? So we know that the house is being haunted, and we know sort of facts about Stella's mom, or presumed facts about her mom, and that it was tragedy, and that Stella, was... What I don't understand is what happened to the dad, like her dad. Is that ever explained?
Where was he among all this? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there's this whole thing of them going back to Paris and then coming back to the Windward house and then telling Carmel to fuck off, and then Carmel comes back.
How about this? Okay, the twist is that there are two ghosts instead of one good, one bad, when we've sort of been led to believe that the ghost is solely the mother, Mary, but it turns out Mary isn't Stella's mother.
That's right. So the twist is that Stella is the illegitimate child of Carmel through the affair, and that Mary cut a deal with Carmel to say, fuck off, I'll take this child back to the States or whatever. And they paid her off to stay away. And Carmel said, I'm not cool with that, came back. And then... Oh, God. And then in the ensuing fight over Stella, Mary fell off the cliff.
Yes.
Sort of. Is that kind of right?
Yeah.
I mean, it got super confusing to me.
So you can also see why this is why I think I'll enjoy it more a second time through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is also kind of a known thing about it. In one of the interviews I was reading with the filmmaker, or the interview I read with the filmmaker, the interviewer was straight up like, is it the story a little confusing kind of thing? And quickly like, yeah, that's what the director was like, yeah, but whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's based on a novel, so it's like, I bet it reads pretty easy in the novel. It's like you're able to follow along. You've got constraints when you're making a 1944 movie as to what you can keep in and keep out and how you can explain it and all of that kind of stuff. But all in all, I mean, I get it. I think it's a cool revelation, and it does lead to a fairly clear and like satisfying catharsis to get that information and then go, oh, okay, now we have something to conclude.
Yeah.
But then everybody lives happily ever after.
Yeah.
I guess except for Mary.
Right. And we'll get into more of just kind of what happens throughout what are the phenomena? What do they do? How are they dealing with it? I'm sure as we get into our next section, if you're ready for it, Tim.
Oh, I'm always ready, baby.
All right. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm. Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
All right. I'll start with then to something where you said, yeah, you pointed out, and this is still totally true, how it's like the, how did you put it? Oh yeah, she happens to be 20, and we have this guy who's like the stand-in. He's the actors from Ray Milland as Rick from Dial M with Murder. Is how
he's
I
pretty
recognize
famous.
with
like,
him.
I know his name for sure.
He looks like Jimmy Stewart. It's funny.
He does. You're right.
But he's at that age, so it is lower. But here's Tim is the thing. Is a big difference. It doesn't change that fact, but the movie acknowledges it. His character goes, oh, what are you talking about? She's just a girl kind of thing, and that is just, that is just evidence that the movie is just, it's so many of these horror movies we watch, there's a line. It's like, do these people, are they even thinking about like basic things, or are they not,
Sure.
Are they in touch with reality enough kind of to
be
build
fair,
that into the film?
As sort of on its face, cringy as it seems. Ray Milland, and by proxy Rick, in 1943 when they filmed this, he would have been 33.
He looks way older.
I agree.
But
so I'm gonna argue for the fact that when I was 33, I dated a 20-year-old for 2 months too. It didn't work out, guys, because that's a big gap.
And this is not the topic that I was necessarily meaning to bring up with it, because what I meant to do was just say that was a very, very small thing that then it's evidence, though, of this movie. And this is trying to segue to overall, this was a good movie. It was not by filmmakers who knew what was up, Yeah,
and I mean, I think they handle it mostly appropriately, right? Like in terms of storytelling and like giving people point of view and not just skimming over things that the audience or even us would be like, what? Yeah,
I gotta say, yeah. So now, just the bigger things that I thought, were really good about it was working. It's just like, really well done movie. Like when we were trying to explain that what's the actual story going on behind it all. Usually that's the thing, like in, I hate to say it, like the Others. I mean, I haven't seen it in forever, but any kind of more modern ghost film where it's like all about the learning of the story, and it's, and this person took revenge on them. What's the one that we just watched with like the Lodgers? But like something about this and The Innocents, which we watched, which feels we kind of lump them together, but that was made in the 60s versus this.
Like 15, 16 years later.
Yeah. So just a little context, but
it's crazy.
Point being, something about when they're those earlier ones, I get into it way more as far as like whatever that story is behind it. Like something about more modern films, I just want it to be like, okay, it's evil, straight and simple, great. I don't care about all this other stuff. But something about here, it feels built into the text and just kind of what exactly you would want from these, at least for me.
Well, they do what I think is a incredibly important and sometimes, if not often, overlooked thing right off the bat. They have one character, the woman, Pam, who is essentially like, there's some supernatural shit going on. So she calls it right away. She senses it. She knows what's up. She's correct.
Yes.
And then you have Rick, her dumbass brother, who's so like, he just gaslights and fucking projects on her constantly. It's amazing, right? But he is effectively wrong. And so it gives us somewhere to go because he's sitting there going, no, don't get hysterical, even though she's like completely calm. He keeps saying, don't get hysterical, Pam. And he's the hysterical one. And he's also the one going, there's a scientific explanation. Don't get crazy. It's totally fine. It's totally fine.
But he's also not, though. Oh, sorry, you were getting somewhere.
Well, but then so the character is saying that, but it's presented in a way that's very clearly a cover. Like they film him saying to his completely calm sister, don't get hysterical. And so we see right away, and then we get a little moment of him kind of being like, like when she walks away, where it's like, oh, we're being told it's not just cringy. We're being told he's acting out. And so what it does is it gives us an opportunity for his character to actually have an arc and not just be this sort of bullshit, misogynistic, like patriarchal, annoying character. He ends up through Stella and through the experience learning to not be such a dick.
Yeah.
And that's important, right?
It seems like, and that's what one of the aspects that really, really kept my attention always in these movies, and this one especially, of like just seeing how everyone is dealing and adapting with being confronted with a haunting. Like, seeing his character go through that arc. But it seemed like it was all actually pretty subtle, which I enjoyed, as far as like when he takes when I loved when we just hear that crying and moaning, and this woman's crying and moaning, and we hear. And he steps out to check it out, and then Pamela's like, "No, it's like you heard in the trailer. It's everywhere and it's nowhere. Like I've looked everywhere." And
Right.
She knows all about it, and seeing him take that in, kind of thing, and like, "Oh wow, we both hear it."
It's also, this is another smart storytelling sort of thing. It's pretty subtle, but what they do is that when they move into the house, they don't move in together. Mm-hmm. Pam moves in. I think it's like 2 weeks or something like that prior, gets the house all sort of set up and like all the furniture moved in and however they want the house to be. He's on assignment still in London or wherever. And when he shows up, we're experiencing a bit of the movie through him, which is good, right? Like we are the naive audience, we're that perspective coming in. We should be learning through his eyes, and the people around him should be sort of like giving us the proper, information to move forward.
And yeah, and it's always just cool as sort of showing character and how they're reacting to all this playing out. Like I thought it was neat how the grandfather, the guy who sells them the house, is in it throughout. Commander Beach. He says when we first meet him, he's kind of like, all that is nonsense, this haunted stuff. It's just the sound of the wind, that stories being told kind of thing. But then as soon as we learn the reason that is adamant lying because he believes it.
That's right.
Which is not too typical as far as seeing it. I don't know, it kind of felt like a twist almost in that way. It was cool.
That's right. Yeah. I like that device a lot, actually, because I'm trying to think, what's a good kind of counter example of that? It's like I can sort of imagine that cliched character who's the like stick in the mud, doesn't believe in any of it at all, and gets his comeuppance because of that. Whereas this is sort of it's similar, but it's a little more nuanced, where it's like, he's being a stick in the mud for a purpose to conceal a truth.
Yeah.
And that's way more interesting, right?
Exactly.
Like, now, granted, maybe the comeuppance for the stick in the mud, the first example, is more pleasurable for an audience in certain, depictions. That's fine. But it's very kind of on the surface, one-dimensional of character building. When you have a character that's got a secret or like is hiding things or, doesn't want to face reality, but like knows the truth, like all those things they're developing a good, structure to a character that you could just skate by on. You don't need that to exist in this movie, right? And we see lots of movies where it doesn't. But it's just an example of them doing the extra sort of work on character. Yeah. And when I say they, I'm sort of combining both the author of the novel and the filmmakers. Yeah, absolutely. I actually thought like the character, well done in that sense. And also just like there's something to just you feel it when the movie starts, how well drawn they are, and just like the first lines and everything and how they're playing it. I was immediately like into them. Like just something about how they played it. It just was not so far over the top or anything. Like not even just movies from this era, but all Hollywood studio films mostly. Can be unintended. But and I'll just get this out of the way. But like example, I thought it was probably one of the best examples of the save the cat idea at the beginning of showing people like animals. Just like that whole. This is such not a big scene when I kind of want to start with the bigger things, but I just love they have this chase scene between a dog and a squirrel. That's what starts the film, people, and it's amazing. It's like long enough to be thorough, it's like, I don't know, it was great. It was a little sequence of a dog chasing a squirrel through this big mansion. It was a cute dog. But seeing, I guess more specifically, but the thing like on top of that, like how it played with the characters, it's so rare do you see in movies
people talking to pets, how people talk to pets. I talked to my cat earlier. They're just another member of the family, and that's how they talk to their dog. They're like, what is that? I don't know, just the casual. I'd never really heard that, especially maybe it just stood out because it was an older film, but pretty incredible. Anyways, on to more major things. The setting and the atmosphere is like, that's what makes this movie.
Yeah.
Way up there.
I agree.
The setting being seaside mansion and like utilizing this cliff that's right there, of course. And I got the stuff where it's like built into the story of being drawn to run off the cliff.
They did some really, really cool stuff just filming wise.
Yeah.
Because it seems pretty clear that we're going back and forth. There is an actual house on a cliff that they got some location shots for. I think it's Cornwall, I think, is the area in England that is this sort of, like fishing town, cliffs and such, which I don't know anything about. It's in southwest England. Great. But I assume predominantly it's shot on a set, and so they do really cool stuff with having, at the time what would have been blue screen out the windows and lighting that well, making it feel believable. They're shooting, sea stuff, and all of the blue screen stuff that they do, because there's a fair amount of it, is really well done for the time.
I didn't notice that.
So there's on the cliff, they double the cliff. Half the time it's a set and half the time it's not. And the background of the ocean and the rocky cliffs and stuff behind them, that's blue screen. That's a comp. When they go sailing, that's all a comp. They don't actually go sailing.
I knew that the mansion was comped in, but I wasn't sure if it was kind of like just these wide shots or what it was,
Yeah, I mean, out of windows, there's a number of them that are comps that are really fucking good.
Cool.
They did a fucking good job. For the time, holy fuck.
Well, I mean, you hear it. I literally didn't notice or care. Pay my no mind.
I was looking for it and kind of going, damn, that's really good.
Yeah, and aside from just the overall setting like that, which you just, like what you're just saying and have said about things, it feels wet, it's damp, it's great. You feel that salty air. You could taste that taffy.
Oh, man. I could taste that town.
Yeah,
that
right?
That town is like, that's one of my favorite types of places on the planet. An older sort of like cobblestone fishing town, like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck yeah.
With a mysterious house that everyone knows by name at the
I love it.
But within the house too, of course, not just overall, but the room, it was so neat to have this in movie, because especially when you hear or have experienced anything like any haunted type story, there's often, you always hear, or maybe you've experienced, this room just feels wrong. It's all centered around this room. And that was just like a major, thread idea in this, where there's the grandfather, I guess the father's old like art studio room. That's like the sort of attic with windows that are all water stained kind of thing, but the light's coming in, so it's beautiful and eerie in a way. But it's so neat. That's the room where whenever they step into, and it's also what's neat when they check, they're like, I think we may have gotten rid of it or whatever, and then they go up and check, and immediately just they feel it, and we feel it. It's so good. It's so good. Well,
it's a really, I mean, I'm gonna, this is conjecture. I'm gonna place some personal, I don't know, edification onto this, but if you look at it from a sort of a dramaturgical sense, that room is traditionally what you would call kind of a sunroom, right? It's mostly windows. In fact, it's largely one wall is windows, including part of the roof is one big sort of set of plate windows. And to have the room where, quote unquote, all of the darkness or the malevolence is coming from. And maybe that's not exactly the right way to put it, but the other side ism is happening in that room that represents light. Mm-hmm. But we spend a lot of time in that room at night in the darkness. And so it becomes a bit of a metaphor for like enlightenment, like learning the truth, right? Mm. Like we spend time in a room that should be well lit all the time, is built specifically to be lit, but we spend it in darkness. In fact, there's even a scene when Stella and Rick are in there, and they are completely silhouetted. It's That's at gorgeous. Night. It's so beautiful, and he says, the light, like, we need to put some light on your face because I can barely see you. Yeah. And like even that, just as a fucking metaphor right there, is brilliant, right? Like it's the whole movie in a way.
God, how obvious, right? That the haunted room is the sunroom. Like, right. So good.
It's great. And the architecture of that house is really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, that huge round window at the top of the stairs, the staircase in and of itself, like that sunroom, like it's the cool bathroom that they talk about where there's a fireplace in the bathroom. Like, oh yeah, all that shit is fucking like great.
A skinny fireplace.
Yeah.
So super interesting.
Yeah. It's really, it's the atmosphere and their ability to translate that in a way that hits us kind of like in our guts is so good.
Even just is interesting to see. Yeah, like they helped do that. I remember with that room specifically with the flowers dying as soon as they enter. But what was so interesting to me, I mean, it looked cool. It was really neat and classic, as we'd say. But truly here. Right. But the fact that they made the choice where they didn't notice it, because like you just felt it coming kind of before knowing that this movie that was good and thought out, that you think like, okay, there are the flowers dying, they're gonna turn and go like, Rick, what was that? Those flowers were just alive. Nope. They do a different thing, which is really smart. They distract us away from they double up on the that there is a unseen force that they don't know or understand, because the flowers happen, they don't notice it, and then the dog starts barking unusually, and they just write it off like, oh, he's just chasing after the squirrel again. But we know, because of the flowers, that that's what he's barking at. He's barking at a different thing, and they don't. And so we spend half of the movie ahead of them and then the other half of the movie behind them, which is really fun. Well, maybe not behind them, but like with them, sort of. We learn as they learn. Yeah,
But up to a certain point, we already know what's up.
I feel like it's a good just structure for a haunted house movies, or just know that that's a way to look at it when you're breaking it down. Sure. I mean Stella, when she goes for the cliff, that was such a neat moment where how she described it afterwards. She does. Does he get to her, or does she stop? I forget.
The first time he grabs her. The second time she stops, and then the cliff erodes underneath her feet, which is an incredible stunt.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, just
he grabs her, and she grabs the root of the tree there. It's really, really good.
What she said, though, after the first time really struck me, where how did she describe it? It was like, I felt I wasn't scared at all. It just felt like the sound was comforting. The sound of the ocean was comforting.
Yeah, something like that. That's right. She was like, oh, I just felt like something very placid about her response to it.
Kind of conjured that inner horror of like when you're standing over a cliff and you feel that like pull,
Yeah. It's this is a thing that I looked up at one point because I thought it was weird that I would have that emotion. It's like, have you ever been driving in a car and thought to yourself, I could just drive the car off this cliff right now?
Yeah.
Or you're sitting in the passenger seat and you have this momentary thought of like, I could just open the door and like leap out.
I mean, Christopher Walken's speech in Annie Hall, that's the famous one where he's like, you ever see the headlights at night coming and you want to turn and drive in? It's something like that. You know, talk about turning and driving into the car.
Well, there's a whole, this is a psychologically studied thing, right? It is your brain checking in on your mortality.
Right.
And basically giving you an opportunity to remember, A, you're mortal, like you can die, and B, you have the ability to both control that and stay alive, and choice, I guess, to not. So there's sort of a weird, like, it's like a safety mechanism. You're checking in with the safety mechanism of your brain to like stay alive. And it's, it's good. It's everybody has it. It's a healthy thing.
And that's why it was so particularly disturbing, is because it was like seeing that happen out of her control. It's just bringing it that little bit further where she's literally doing the running and has to be stopped. There's something scarier about it being that versus that she was intentionally just distraught and trying to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. She was drawn. I gotta, knock out the clearly ghosty things that were so neat. We had our...
I honestly, I will say that other than one, which you can see the device, I think the ghost shit is some of the better stuff.
Right?
Like you would put exactly all of these tricks work in a modern film.
It felt like, when you're going to Haunted Mansion as a kid or something, the way the apparition appears, it's that exact floaty Ghostbusters almost kind of.
It's so good.
Yeah, I can't describe. It's just enough to make out that it could be like the figure of a woman.
Right.
Like that's what's so neat about it, and is exactly how kind of like you hear people when they say they've seen some kind of apparition of Tim's like, hey, I did.
I mean, it is very, very, I hate to be cliched about it, but it is pretty much the vibe of what I saw when I saw my ghost.
It was
whose name was Mary as well, apparently.
Which is how you describe, like, hey, oh, wow. But like you're watching a projection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But specifically, how it was like, it could just be like its waves, but no, you do just make out the kind of like shoulders and head and long hair. It's really
neat. Do another genius thing about that. They set up early when they're walking through the house. They set up that because this house is on a cliff and the ocean is right there, the reflection of the ocean dances on the ceiling and walls. And that you get that kind of refracted, light play that makes you almost feel like you're underwater. And to have the ghost sort of have a similar thing is a really cool, you're carrying on with that imagery and that sort of vibe, which is really great.
Yeah. And so aside from the apparition itself, which we see those few couple times towards the end, there was that pillar of a scene, the seance scene, which, God,
so good.
Yeah, so good. So we learned too, like going into it, the kind of where Rick is kind of instigating it because he wants to fake it's like they set up kind of like an at-home Ouija board. And he wants to control their planchette, which is like the wine glass they're using.
It's a brandy glass. Thank you very much.
A brandy glass, of course. To basically tell Stella that I guess they want to communicate her not to go to the house anymore, or they want to like something like that. Which, hey, talk about connected like themes of gaslighting and controlling and misappropriating information.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. The ghost take control. It's so cool.
Just to that point, a quick side note. Part of why I think so much of the kind of what we talk about gaslighting or patriarchal projection, that kind of stuff that exists in this movie and of that time, part of why it's so well handled and works so well in this story, I think, is largely due to the fact that the novel was written by a fucking woman.
Yeah.
And so it's in there. It is a point of view.
Absolutely. Dorothy McCardle.
Yeah.
McCardle. I like that.
I kind of want to read it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I might try and find it.
Oh yeah, no, that scene though, I mean, just wholly successful and just like the eeriness of it. You say you had your apparition sighting. I had a crazy Ouija board experience, which I won't get into. I know everyone's initial reaction is like, yeah, you know, it isn't moving it, but I mean, take my word for it. I mean, yeah, I think those things too. Like I wouldn't. I rule things out, you know, like, anyway, sorry, I have to get to that. But anyway, point being, the eeriness that it felt like in real life was very much there and captured in this sequence. Granted, I haven't seen the Ouija movies.
Oh God,
from recent years.
They are horrible,
but
fun but horrible.
Oh man, this film, that sequence just really, I don't know. There were some particular ways that it moved that brought me right back.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see like a behind the scenes of how they did that one.
Yeah,
I love that stuff.
It had to have been like the controlled underneath.
Yeah, every time a door opens or closes, feels good. Like it's got a good weight and pace to it.
The pages moving on their own of the book or whatever.
The pages, you can see the string.
You can, Tim. You can.
Okay. I saw the string and I was annoyed. I was like, "Oh, you're so close, but there's the string."
Well, you were watching it on your bigger TV.
I was also standing like 4 feet from my big TV when I was watching it.
There you go. Where's the string? It was fun how maybe just kind of something else I didn't mention about like the twist and the kind of the story behind it. And I was saying how like other films do it, maybe just something about when you learn what the story is, it feels familiar or whatever. But what was so neat about this one was that there is what you didn't see coming, that it was the rival ghosts aspect to it, that you had the good one and the bad one. And I don't know. And that was the interesting story for it behind me. That was the idea of these rival ghosts. And that there was the good one. I forget how they resolved that ghost specifically. She just went away. But what Rick does to the bad ghost, I was like waiting for, I just wanted to see it the whole film and was so excited. Kind of like, you know, when you hear like people exorcising houses and stuff like that, blessing homes, you're casting out those bad guys, saying, "We don't want you here. Get out of here." And then to have him doing exactly that and like throw the candelabra like at the bad ghost, I'm like, yeah, Rick, that's how you do it.
It's on the poster, man.
Yeah.
He's throwing that candelabra hard.
By the way, if you just want to see all old black and white films where someone's walking along at night with holding a candelabra in a haunted house, this is one of them. So
yep.
Watch this in The Innocents, and you'll know you'll get your fix.
That's right. So the way that Stella and them all sort of get the good ghost, Carmel, which we learn is the good ghost. We had been under the impression that Mary was the good ghost the whole time, or just that Mary was. I don't know. Did you feel like there was a distinction between good and evil?
You mean like throughout when the ghosts would show up?
Yeah, throughout.
No, it was always just kind of like. It felt like it was always the more sinister presence, but then you did have the moments. In retrospect, I'd have to kind of see it again, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, it kind of really was a twist. But like when the book is turning, I guess now looking at it, I'm like, oh, that didn't actually feel sinister.
Yeah. I think that there's some subtle suggestions of it, but it's not super explicit throughout. Like, because Stella, there are times when they say, "Oh, I don't feel good in this room," kind of thing, and then there are times where it's like, "Oh, but now I smell." What was the smell that they kept smelling?
Oh, right.
They say it about 50 times.
I forget. Not coriander. Marigold.
It starts with an M.
Oh, God, what was that?
Shit.
It's so funny. Not marmalade.
I know. That's what I wanted to say, marmalade. It's like magnolia or something. It's not.
Yeah, a flower.
That's not it. Shit. Oh,
anyways,
man.
we
don't
think
see
that
it in the summary either. Damn.
That was smart because we learned that scent, that perfume is Stella's. So we think, oh, that means Stella's here, which is what happens. At one point, she's hiding out, and it's like, oh, Stella's here. That's why we smelled that. But she tells us early on that it was her mother's perfume. So then,
which then becomes true, which is so cool that they are assuming everybody thinks that Mary was Stella's mother, and therefore when they smell that scent, they're smelling Mary's spirit. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that when they make the realization that Carmel is Stella's actual mother, Stella says, oh, my father wasn't saying that Mary smelled like that. He was always just saying that my mother smelled like that. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of like pushing, that's how they come to kind of understand that there are two ghosts, because they now know that her mother is Carmel, and so that when they've been smelling that, they were smelling Stella's actual mother, Carmel, and that these other things are Mary. And so there's that's kind of where we land with, it's still a little convoluted, but like it's how we get a bit of a distinction between who's who. But what was I going to say about that? Oh, I don't know.
The scent.
It's cool.
The perfume. Yeah, something about the good and the bad.
Marigolds.
Anyways, marigold. No.
No? I don't know. I can't remember.
Muffins. No.
Yeah.
It's the scent of muffins. I feel like this is pretty good for what worked. Do you have anything else?
Well, I think just to comment on Stella as an actress, this was introducing her. She, I guess, hadn't done anything else. I didn't really go deep into. She's in other shit.
You mean Gail Russell? Stuff.
Yeah, her name's Gail Russell. She is. The whole movie, I was like, I have seen her before, or like the familiarity of how she looks was
She's very striking. Yeah.
Yeah, super striking, but like it's one of those things where your brain goes, I recognize this person, but I know this isn't the person that I recognize. They just look so much like somebody, you know. I cannot figure out who it is, but very compelling, quite good. I mean, I think she holds her own with these other pretty fucking established stars.
Actually, yeah, I am really glad you mentioned that, because in Things of Note, I want to mention more who she was. But I think the more important thing than actually mentioning any of that is, I think she did bring a very I mean, I'm trying to think of another word than just great performance, but very you feel her, you're drawn in. It's effective.
Exactly. Which I think for this type of movie in particular is super important, to find that person who gives you kind of both a sense of unease, but also like you want to like, you're like compelled by them. You kind of want to be like, whoa, wait, what's going on? I don't know. Yeah. Do I want to help you, or what's like, and you kind of, because we're seeing it all through Rick, we're like, well, yeah, she's enchanting, right? Like, right. And he's enchanted by her.
You see, though, that just when it's just one of those people where it's like you feel their world, like just by their presence, and you can kind of really get sucked into it and buy into it, and all that jazz. And just was a really nice counterpoint to, like, you know, also say, yeah, the siblings, everyone in this was great, but like the siblings kind of just where they weren't, you know, you were just so afraid that they'd fall into something a little more, you know, not yucky as in gross, but just kind of like, hey, you know, we're 1940s people, but it never really went there.
I think it actually functions in the opposite way, and really, really well. It feels really progressive to me, actually. The foundation of what seems to be kind of the underlying theme beyond the haunted stuff, but there's sort of this underlying theme of like, live your life. Do what you want to do. And the women, so Pam is really the bigger advocate for that. And she's a very sort of, I don't know, she seems way ahead of her time, right? Like, let's just do, like, we can do this. Let's do what we want to do. We only live once. Like, let's take opportunity. Let's live the life we want to live. And then Stella is sort of a foil to that, or vice versa. But like, there's a repeated sort of phrase of that Rick, Pam, and somebody else, I feel like, says it about Stella, don't live somebody else's life. And that's really important, right? Like, that's a pretty progressive idea for women at that time to be pushed along. Now, granted, the book was only written 3 or 4 years before the movie. So, like, it is of that time. And it really is, you know, kind of standing on the foundation of these ideals of, like, I guess kind of women's liberation in a way. Like, it's got that stuff going on underneath. Like, the whole construct of Stella being kind of, she's fucking 20 and she's basically imprisoned by her grandfather.
Oh God,
like,
what was that scene was so, I mean, sorry, that line just like shook me to the core. What did the grandpa say to her? It was like, she's too weak to make friends.
Yeah. There's this whole thing of like, no, I need to like, the overprotectiveness and like to a fault, like keeping her away from the world. It's basically the shielding your child, the innocence of your child. Like, you can't, right? They have to fucking learn the truth and grow up and move on. And so all of that stuff being in there with the characters like Pam, and even in a way, Holloway, she sort of becomes the evil person in this. She's the opposite, right? Like, she's trying to keep people locked in. Yeah. Right? Like, her whole thing. And what actually becomes true is that she is, in a way, a metaphor in and of herself for that, right? Like, she ends up being the crazy one, quote unquote, crazy. You know, and I think you can make that connection where it's like, yeah, when you hold on, when you try to like keep things the way they were, keep people from seeing the truth, you know, keep people from being liberated or from just being enlightened in general, that is going to make you crazy, not them. Totally.
And yeah. Oh yeah. What I was going to say on that, what you had started saying, to bring it all back, I think that's why I liked the sibling thing. Like, you saw, you put it forward as, oh, it feels like they're siblings, just so that way, of course, that means it's going to be about them meeting people and getting into a romance, leaving open for that. But I read it the opposite, where I'm like, how refreshing to not have it be sort of like this concentric around a man and woman couple from the get-go, and just having a woman be a sister who's like the main character, and that be it. You know, I guess that's how I read into it.
I don't mean to malign it. I just, like, the first reaction I had was sort of like, brother and sister buying a house and living together is just a construct that it seemed weird. You know, it's like, it's but just not middle-aged, not middle-aged, but like, whatever, adults.
The details aside of that, what I think that was wrapped up in also for me, like, I love stories where it's just like, and here, but today, this was the inciting incident, meaning, but then the dog ran into the mansion and their lives were forever changed.
Right.
So because it was all wrapped up in that too, that worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I think the thing that, well, we could talk about this in things that didn't work, but like they do end up coupling up, right? And I was like, well,
I mean, hey, whatever. Isn't that better than them just living together as siblings forever?
No, I don't know.
If you were so weirded out by them living together as siblings alone in this big house,
I wouldn't say I was weirded out. I just was like, it seems like a device.
Okay. The last thing that I didn't mention, I did want to, is actually just some of the deeper themes that were there for me that I haven't mentioned. And there's one, it's, you know, seems like it's there in so many of the movies that we watch, but the idea of how to deal with the past, how do you reconcile it? Is you know, the idea of moving on a fallacy, you know, or is it better just to somehow get a part of you? How do you do that? I like it to put it as, can we ever make peace with the past? Mm-hmm. And to have that all in the story of, I don't know, it just instills it right in you, like those scenes where Rick's arguing to her when she's there reminiscing for the first time. Wow, I remember this, from when I lived here when I was 3. And Rick's like, well, this is our home now. You don't have to worry about all these things. Just kind of, and you do want to think that with houses that you can, okay, this new good energy in it is the thing that it now is, but it always does. You can't completely erase something's past. So just the
and
house,
nor should you.
The story. Yeah, exactly. But it's looked at in that very binary way a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Which isn't good.
Yeah, which is I don't understand that, but
well,
okay.
it's
people do it.
It's cool how I don't know. This is a really neat story to explore that idea.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't know what's said about it, but yeah. All right. Well, let's hear it, Tim. There was anything that you had. I want to know what did not work.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I was reading some essay on this. It said the jokes may be telegraphed, but never the jolts.
Yeah. That's funny.
I think that was, I said a lot of it. I think now that I know what it is will grow on me. But as far this is the section for it. I just want to specify again, this is very first time viewing. Like the more egregious thing in the second half that felt kind of just like dragging was when it kind of like felt like it was where other haunted house movies, The Innocents that we've watched, some of the other ones. It feels like, you kind of have the midpoint and then all the evil, all the haunted aspect that just kind of starts ramping up more and more. This, it kind of felt like it stayed more rooted in its melodrama in the second half. And I like that stuff. Like I like those movies and when it's done well, but it was this weird kind of not expecting that. But then the worst of that was though in that second half that maybe was dragging for me a bit, not holding my attention as much, was the, it was this character that just felt like this played for laughs woman who like had this over the top performance. I forget when it is they're at the house. I want to say when she's at the recovery house.
Yeah, Miss Bird.
Yeah, I think that was her.
It it actually felt kind of weirdly exploitative to me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, here's an insane person. Here's a depiction of a woman who's insane. Like, he.
But there was like music over it, playing it for
so that's my
laughs.
big issue with this whole movie. The score sucks. Like, it is such a style of like, it's a cartoon style. Like I think of it in those terms where it's like if somebody walks up the stairs, it's like dun 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 dun. Like everything is sort of like played to the action. And it doesn't work for me. Like
it's too much of a story world, like kind of thing. Well, but
yeah, it's like somebody will tell a joke and it's like ba-da-ba-da-ba, and it's like, oh God.
I will say just to offset it though, going back to what worked, the music that he composes and plays on the piano that's used as a theme kind of throughout, that is cool. I thought that was a really neat thing.
That's fair. It's just the style of that scoring for film.
Yeah.
Really pisses me off. I get it because at the time that was the norm, no problem, whatever. But like, imagine this movie with like a really dark, ominous score.
Right.
Holy shit. Or like a Danny Elfman or, something that really makes you kind of like gives the world character as opposed to playing to the acting style or whatever it's
I feel like
doing.
that's what we had to wait for crossing over into 1960 with The Innocents for,
Yeah, no, you're right.
Well, what were you going to say? What didn't work for you?
I mean, that was the big one for me. It was the consistent one that I just was like, oh, damn it. Like, every time it came back, it just made, like, the way I thought about it when I was thinking about, like, what did I actually think about the movie, my reaction would be sarcastically being like, well, it was just delightful. It just has that kind of canned nature to it in that respect.
That was so minuscule next to like the haunting, effective atmosphere of it all, though.
I agree in this sort of this. I get what you're saying. It is minuscule, but it so undercuts the goodness of the movie,
right?
And it just it bums me out.
Is that why you're a stream it, not a rent it?
Yeah. I mean, almost entirely. You know, like, Ray Milland is fine.
I like him.
I don't know.
At first, I was kind of like, he's a poor man's Jimmy Stewart, just because they looked so similar. But then I realized, no, Jimmy's so Jimmy that sometimes you gotta get a Ray.
What else didn't really work for me? I mean, it is really mostly that. The attempted comedy, the style of comedy. Because some of the jokes are fine, but the style of comedy and that era of, like, aw-shucksing things.
Right.
I just like more realism. And there is realism in it. And that's what pisses me off, because I'm like, we don't need this other thing.
That thing that you're talking about, though, it just, my experience watching it, I felt like it was so isolated to like a moment or a scene kind of thing, or like a character. So it was really easy just to be like, okay, as time goes on, this is just going to take on a charm that I kind of just like for what it is, kind of thing. But
yeah. Beyond that, I think the second half kind of drags on a bit, where it's like there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of them kind of being like, well, I guess we should go get Stella, but she's over here and we need to go over there, and now she's over here and we need to go over there, and it just becomes this like sort of back and forth where it's like, hey, let's move on. The last 20 minutes of the film, I kind of was like, all right, guys. Like,
no, I was feeling that too.
Let's wrap it up, because we get it. We're there. Let's get to the punch.
Right.
And the punch is good. That's the thing. It's like, that's what kind of annoyed me, where I was like, we're just kind of dragging it out a little bit here, and it's not serving the story necessarily.
Well,
beyond that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty great.
Should we make sure we aren't dragging beyond what we have to and get to things of note?
Yeah.
All right. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
So, Tim, now I want to start off right with episode 101 here, what I wish we had done for all the episodes before, which was try to keep track of if there were any indelible moments for us.
Okay.
This is how we'll always start things of note. It'll be things of note / indelible moments. Indelible moments meaning we think are some things that are especially unique to horror movies, and that even the worst of horror movies, because they are horror and allow for crazy, specific, out there situations, there will be something indelible, meaning specific, interesting, odd, specific, all those things.
Yeah.
And just indelible is such a better word for indelible, so that's why it's hard to.
Yeah, right.
But I know what it means, but anything for this movie? I mean, for me, it's the dog chasing the squirrel. The fact that it went beyond 2 shots.
Yeah, that's funny. Man, I think just as a visual moment, well, not just a visual, I guess it's sort of an emotional shocker, sort of like exciting moment. Like the way the cliff crumbles out from under her when she gets to the edge of it the second time it's so good. Yeah. Like it looks fantastic. In fact, it made me go, holy shit, how the fuck did they do that? Yeah. And to me, that's kind of, especially in horror, it's like anytime I'm wondering or like excited to figure out how a thing was done because the visual was that compelling. I think that's kind of the one for me. I mean, her character is pretty indelible to me. And so like those two things together in that moment are really great. There's that shot of her from Rick's point of view when she has fallen and the cliff has crumbled underneath her and she's grabbed onto the tree and she's reaching up, and there's a POV from Rick on the cliff looking down at her. She's looking up and there's this sort of the fucking, ocean down, cliff rocks down below her. Like, it's a beautiful shot. So for me, that little sequence really kind of sealed it.
Cool. All right. Other things of note. Let's see. We have Charles Lang Jr., who's the cinematographer. He's nominated for an Oscar on this film.
Oh, nice.
Went on to do, I RecommenDEADed Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. He went on to do that. Some Like It Hot. Cool. Yeah, we mentioned this was based on the novel by Irish author Dorothy McArdle, and the name of it was actually called not The Uninvited, but Uneasy Freehold.
Interesting title.
So, but not just renamed Uninvited for the film, but for its U.S. publication. So you can look up both of those, Tim. Interesting indeed. Uneasy Freehold. Huh. The film has been claimed by contemporary film scholars as being among the first films in history to portray ghosts as legitimate entities rather than illusions or misunderstandings played for comedy. So yeah, cool. Before this, what we were saying, this was very much ghosts were just kind of either the Abbott and Costello kind of tone thing, right, or like, oh, it was all the Scooby-Doo thing, Right. So yeah, again, just giving credit's due, and that's it's kind of gone on to be so noteworthy for a big reason. So poor Gail Russell. I don't know if it's even worth mentioning. I mean this stuff as just like, when someone's led a tragic life, I don't want. It's like it's weird because it's like. That's all. I don't want that to be all that we know about them, and that's what they're remembered for. But at the same time, I want to like acknowledge and kind of thing. But she died at like 36, and just the basically just due to alcoholism, where she was ushered into the studio system like literally out of high school, still in high school, just based on her looks and. The stress of being on set and just like, the way being treated, generally and all that stuff. She just used alcohol as a coping mechanism, was always super stressed on set, had like debilitating self-consciousness. She said that like meeting new people made her sick and want to run away, like when on the set of the new movie. But yeah,
it was a really bad time for young women to be in the studio system. I RecommenDEADed it a long time ago. There's a podcast called You Must Remember This, and they do a whole series on the sort of MGM like heyday, and it talks a lot about the treatment of actors, men and women, in particular the kids who were acting, anywhere up to about 20, and it's pretty egregious, like the mistreatment of them and the body shaming, the like contractual obligations to stay under a certain weight, like all that shit. Judy Garland's probably one of the most famous ones who got wrecked for it.
You hear those stories like Judy Garland, even Natalie Wood, and just druggy, drugs being put on them, like they're being drugged.
They were being fed amphetamines constantly to stay thin.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up.
Man, Gail,
and alcohol, like as teenagers, they're being given all sorts of shit just to keep them in line.
It sounds like Gail's just kind of ushered in. Well, when it is weird that she's basically singled out by like a big producer, and just like in actuality, just like, hey, you're instantly going to be in these movies all of a sudden, given a contract deal because of that. And you'll catch up. You'll figure out acting as you go along.
Well, and let's not beat around the bush. If you think the sort of the comeuppance that's happening with, powerful men in Hollywood is a new thing. Like rest assured, back then it was 1,000 times worse.
I was happy I was happy to hear Ray Milland, the director, said on set that he would just be constantly rehearsing with her to make her just try to feel comfortable. He really took her under his wing in that way.
I mean, hopefully also as a device to keep, whichever douchebag producer or whoever who was probably breathing down her neck every 10 seconds away from her.
It was apparently the guy who played her grandfather. He was, how he treated her was just very she didn't work her way up. What about, you got to be a professional kind of
God.
put it that way. Yeah.
Fucking fragile old white dude.
Yeah. Anyway,
here.
Rest in peace, Gail Russell, whose next film actually went on. Next thing I had was that there was an immediate follow-up to this, a suspense thriller called The Unseen. Gail Russell playing a different character. So it's weird. It's kind of same director, actually a script by Raymond Chandler.
My favorite.
Yeah, it sounds like it wasn't as good, but this was successful enough. They did an immediate quote-unquote follow-up. A lot of the same people involved, though not a direct sequel. It made me happy to hear, being from where I hail, Northern California, Bay Area, the film was filmed there, around Fort Bragg, around the Russian River, they said. Yeah.
Cool.
San Francisco. Yeah. Cliffs, all that. So this was...
Yeah, I was super confused when the movie started because I was like, oh, that's the California coastline. And then they were like, we're in England. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Beautiful. Made me miss it up there.
Let's go.
Mendocino.
I'll just drive up there. I haven't been up the PCH in a long time. So
yeah, I know. Sure. We should do a filming locations tour of this and whatever else we could.
That would be sweet.
Last bit, I just had a couple my favorite excerpts from an interview with a director, Lewis Allen. This was his first film. It says, this was from Criterion's website, where they say the following is excerpted from an interview that was conducted in 1997 and included in Tom Weaver's 2004 book, Science Fiction and Fantasy Film Flashbacks. So that's where this is from, with the director, Lewis Allen. I love the question. Since The Uninvited was your first film directing job, I was wondering if you'd be able to remember, 50 plus years later, what scene you shot the first day. I'm smiling already, Tim. Yes, I can. It was the scene in the house with the dog and the squirrel. It took a whole day to get that squirrel to run up the chimney. The man who owned the dog was a fellow called Weatherwax. He owned a lassie. He had the dog, and he also had the squirrel. We spent the whole day with just the camera crew and the squirrel and the dog, getting the squirrel to go up the chimney. That was my first day as a director.
Man, I feel like this is really close, akin to my daily routine, because I go out and I have my coffee on my little patio and Gary the squirrel comes by and we hang out together.
I got a good picture of the two of you, by the way.
Oh, nice.
And then next question I liked, this is it, no, they have to. The Uninvited is widely regarded as one of the top ghost movies. A lot of people say it's the best ghost movie. What is the key to making a successful ghost movie like The Uninvited? Well, I think the whole point when you're making a scary movie is to try and be honest and as straightforward as you can, and not be a phony. I treated The Uninvited as though I believed in it. That's my whole explanation for that. Tim, that's what I'm always saying. I want the filmmaker to be at least in the treating it as real when they're making it.
Yeah. No, that's huge.
Yeah, that was really cool just to get that, I don't know, not vindication for I'm always saying that, but I look towards that and relate and want to make similar films. So it's cool hearing that from back then. Great. All right. Well, if that's it for The Uninvited, next we have a couple RecommenDEADtions for you. Tim, what do you want to recommend dead? Anyone listening?
So I've mentioned before, I think, or maybe I just talk about this a lot in my life. The Golden State Killer,
Yeah.
who is a serial killer who basically was prolific for about 14 years or something like that.
What's his
Killed
name?
Joseph D'Angelo, piece of shit.
So see if I recognize it that way, just in the...
I don't think so yet, because he's sort of one of the most unpublicized in a way. Like, he doesn't... Because he had not been caught, nobody knew who he was until 2 years ago.
Mm.
And so he's one of the longer sort of standing unsolved mass serial killers. He killed at least 12 people. There's also 2 suicides that occurred sort of as a result of things that he did. I mean, you know what I mean. Like, you could kind of say that in a way he killed those 2 people too, because his impact on their lives. And he raped, over 50 women, which is just horrible to think about. So anyway, he was active from like the early 70s into the early 80s, and then just disappeared. And
so Tim's recommendation is the Golden State Killer. No, I'm kidding.
Unsolved for 40 years, and then they ultimately caught him with DNA. But there is a book that the woman who essentially helped get him caught in a lot of ways, this woman, Michelle McNamara, was a true crime writer, and she got really obsessed with this case, and she ended up dying while writing the book because she essentially worked herself to death, which is really sad. But they released the book. Her husband and the other colleagues that were working on it with her eventually released the book. I read it a couple years ago, and I think I may have recommended the book a long time ago. But HBO has made the book into a docuseries, and there are 3 episodes so far. And man, I'll tell you what, like, the book is amazing, so definitely read it. But watching interviews with victims and like seeing footage of Michelle like talk about the case and like her investigation into it and her, how she wrote the book is really compelling and quite sad. But knowing that D'Angelo ultimately got caught, and largely because of the work that she put in, at the very least to spur the DAs into more action after so long of this being a cold case.
Wait, sorry, did the author live to see him be caught?
No.
Wow.
No.
Did she know who he was, but it was just about getting the evidence?
Nope. No.
Wow.
The last passage of the book is a letter that she wrote to the killer before knowing who he is. And read the book. I'm not going to spoil the last page of the book. But it's quite remarkable. About a year, it might not even have been a year after the book came out, they caught him.
Well, how about, can you just recommend it as the book and the show?
Yeah, I mean, assuming I didn't recommend the book, I think I did, but whatever.
I don't remember.
It's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
I don't think you did.
Both the series and the book are called I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Cool.
So yeah, it's on HBO. It's fucking really good.
Great.
The end.
I'll keep mine short because it's just kind of like one of the new releases that you hear great things about that I just finally saw and I agree with, was Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It was great. It was so good. I watched it last night. You're looking at, you don't know much about it?
I don't know anything about it.
Do you recognize the name of it? Well, here's the little synopsis. On an isolated island in Brittany at the end of the 18th century, a female painter is obliged to paint a wedding portrait of a young woman. Does it ring a bell? I mean, she made, it's by the filmmaker Celine, it's French, Celine Sciamma. I don't know how you'd say that French. She made Water Lilies, Tomboy, Girlhood. I'm surprised, it was getting all the kind of acclaim. It was playing at the Vista before, movies weren't playing anymore. But man, I just got so wrapped up in it, and it's, I guess I will say, I mean, it was like, just when a film can capture kind of the like, I I guess, sexual tension between two people and have it be all about that and have it be about, like with basically no conceivable, score to it too, except for diegetic music, used really well here and there. It's got to be real, the performances, and man, you just get sucked right in. The colors are incredible. I guess I want to go on, but I really don't like saying much about stories at all if I haven't seen them, so that's why I'll just leave it at that. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, if you haven't seen it.
Cool.
Great.
All right.
So next, we gotta pull and find out next week's film, Tim. It's your turn.
Oh, baby. Here we go. There's headphones in the hat. I don't know why that happened.
All right,
Here
Tim,
we go.
what is episode 102?
102 is this one right here. It is called... it's called Gothic.
Oh, Gothic, 1986, submitted by my bud Shane. All right. Great. We saw a trailer for this movie and we're like, what is this? I've never heard of it. This looks so weird.
Did we see it when we went to see The Cured?
No, this is from 86. So it was on a VHS. We were watching a VHS of like, it might have been when we watched The Gate or something like that on VHS.
Oh my God.
We were staying somewhere that had a VCR and the tape collection. And we were both like, that movie looks crazy. Look at those visuals. And anyway, he's like, this is my submission for your podcast.
Wow.
Wait, what is it called?
Gothic.
All right. So
I feel like we've heard of or seen something by this director, Ken Russell.
I think so. Oh, yeah. Ken Russell.
What's he? Oh, he did Tommy in Altered States. Holy shit.
And the one that I've recommended, The Devils.
That's right. And The Devils. Yeah. Cool. All right.
I'll be sure to let Shane know. And I
hope this is like a fucking hidden gem.
Don't get your expectations so high. I'll always be the one to tell you that, Tim. But a curiosity nonetheless. We hope you watch it and join us next time here at Dismembering Horror for Gothic. Our big ask, if you haven't already, is tell a friend. If you made it this far, we don't ask for a review as much as we love it. We don't ask for this or that. But, hey, we just thought we'd make it that. A like-minded friend who want to hang out with us, be here. Tim, what are you doing?
What? Did you say your thing?
No, I was just looking at you.
I was like so distracted.
I don't know.
Go on, I'm listening.
That was it. I just looked to you like kind of like anything else, Tim. But no, Tim's got nothing. All right. In which case, we will now officially wrap up and say thank you so much for listening.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.